Okay, continuing with my series of chats about the situation with New York City Ballet, etc. Somebody brought up something this morning which was interesting about Suzanne Farrell and how I felt about Suzanne Farrell, etc. And of course, that's a whole very important subject. But before I get into that, let me just go over it again. My main concern is that the New York City Ballet retains its superior position, let's say, with the Balanchine repertory. I found that in the last 35 years, under Peter Barnes' directorship, a lot of things have changed. I've staged Balanchine all over the world. I don't need to go into my background again, but I do know what Balanchine wanted. But since somebody brought up Suzanne, I have to say that probably the only person that loved him as much as I did, and who probably even knows more what he wanted, is Suzanne Farrell. Now, we all know that she was his last primary muse, that he created many ballets for her, that she's run her own company based at the Kennedy Center for many years, that she travels around the world. We have some traffic. That she travels around the world staging some of his ballets, not a lot, but a few. I've watched her stage his ballets at the Paris Opera and other places. She is an expert. She knows exactly what he wants. She knows how to turn dancers into ballerinas, and without making them copies of herself. She's very good about that. She's very careful not to have the dancers pick up her unique mannerisms, which were fine for her to do, but look stupid on somebody else. And she's very aware of that, and she knows that, and she's better than most at keeping that at bay. As far as working with Suzanne Farrell, of course I could work with Suzanne Farrell. I have worked with Suzanne Farrell. At the Paris Opera, a little story, I was staging Concerto Barocco when she was there staging Zagan, and I wanted her opinion. I'm very open to getting opinions of former Balanchine ballerinas and using whatever I can learn from them to make my own stagings better. So I asked Suzanne to take a look at Barocco. But before that, actually, I took her into a room and we spent like 2 hours together going over everything. And I learned the ballerina role from Allegra Kent, who is one of my favorite Balanchine former muses also. And but Suzanne liked everything that I showed her, and she had a couple little differences she thought maybe would be better. So I incorporated those because I respect her. And then she went away, and then she came back to Paris about a week before the premiere. And this is very funny. By that point, the dancers were on stage with orchestra, and she watched a rehearsal like a day or two before the actual premiere. And at the Paris Opera, once you get them on stage with the orchestra, the ballet is pretty well set. You're not going to make any changes. They just can't accept that. But Suzanne, for some reason, after the rehearsal, she comes up on stage and she said, "John, this is wrong. You know, I can't believe you did this wrong, Johnny." Everybody in New York still calls me Johnny. And I was a little embarrassed, and especially in front of the dancers. And they weren't too happy about it, let me tell you. They all were pouting up a storm in the best Paris Opera style. Nothing like a French ballerina pout. It's impressive. But anyway, I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And there's just a couple details. And she said, "We have to rehearse this tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And I went. Now, she was not the one setting the ballet. I was setting that ballet. And I had invited her to come in and watch it. Be that as it may, I said, "Well, all right, if you feel that strongly." And she goes, "Yes, yes, yes." She goes, "So this step is wrong, and this is wrong, and blah, blah, blah." So next morning, we all gather in the studio. The girls were not too pleased. And she was a little late, but she comes in about 10 minutes late. And she says to everybody, she says, "I must apologize. That what Johnny said was absolutely correct. And I was up all night going over it, and then I realized that, yes, I don't know why I thought the step was different, and it was my fault, and so please excuse me. And girls, you look beautiful, and Johnny, I'm sorry, I was just very tense, but no, everything's fine." And she left. Now, that really is a big person for somebody like Suzanne Farrell and her position in the world of ballet, to admit that she was wrong and she made a mistake. And I really admired and respected her for that. But of course, if the board, I don't think I have a chance at the directorship, but I feel it's absolutely imperative that the New York City Ballet continue the Balanchine ballets to the best of their ability. And having someone like Suzanne Farrell have a seat at the table is a no-brainer to me. She should have a seat at the table, be invited, give her a title if she doesn't want to be the artistic director. There's plenty of titles to go around. But it's people like her and Allegra Kent and Kay Mazo. They need to really be there while they still can, while we're all still alive. It's ridiculous that they're not. And as far as Suzanne, you know, she has had more experience running a company and she's had more experience coaching dancers than any of the rest, really. The only difference between how Suzanne does it and how I do it is I also, well, she teaches also, but I teach all the classes and I do the lighting and I do all the other stuff that a director does. I'm not sure how much Suzanne gets involved with the lighting and all that, but maybe she does. But, you know, I'm not saying she wants to be the director, and I've not spoken to her at all. But this question came up from a friend of mine this morning, and of course, Suzanne Farrell is that's legacy, that's the history. And it's crazy to me, you know, and if she wants more, if she wants to say, you know, get involved with the casting, why not? Why not hear her out? Why not? She's smart. You know, why not see who she thinks a younger cast of, say, Diamonds might be, or some ballet she may be coaching that she's certainly intimately involved with, and also the creation of. Watching her and Balanchine work together, I was there before she left the company, when she was his, you know, ideal, when it was only Suzanne, really. And they had a symbiotic relationship. I mean, it was like she could read his mind, and that made it easier for him to choreograph, and he was inspired, of course, by her. So I think we can all be inspired by somebody like Suzanne, and she should be used. Anyway, so if they're not going to use me, fine, you know, whatever. I know I've been away a long, long time, and people think that maybe I'm too stuck in the old school Balanchine, but as long as they're going to do Balanchine ballets, I think they should do them correctly. And as I've stated over and over, the Balanchine repertoire is the whole reason that company exists, and should continue to be the reason that company exists, really. It should be, you know, the repository for his ballets where everybody in the world can come see them danced, lit, costumed correctly. And my old New York City Ballet loyalty kicks in. I want that company to dance better than any company in the world, every ballet they dance. And that comes from class. But I won't get into the classes again. So I just wanted to make that clear about Suzanne Farrell. It's mind-boggling that she isn't at the top of the list, or that she's not involved already. And I haven't heard she is. So I guess that's the end of my Suzanne Farrell rant. And I'm making all these public. I'm putting my talks publicly, because even if I don't get the directorship, I want people to know how strongly I feel about this. And who knows what will happen in the future anyway, but my resume is there for anybody to see, and where I've staged his ballets, and the successes I've had staging his ballets, by the way. Jerry Robbins said my production of Prodigal Son, when I did it for the Paris Opera, was the definitive one. He said it was the definitive version of Prodigal Son, which made Peter Martins very unhappy. So, sorry about that. But again, Suzanne should be included somehow and respected. I understand the problems the board has. I understand everything that's going on. That's should be pushed aside, because in the taking the long view, it's the art that's important. The business side of it and whatever scandals are happening will pass, but you can't let the art, meaning Balanchine's art, atrophy. And I'm very afraid of that. Because boy, when I go and when my generation goes, it's over. Well, unless it's really fixed. It's got to be fixed now. On that happy note, I bid you adieu. Bye.